The problem with conventional textbooks is that they often have the following goals: one, they want readers to be able to use functional and polite Japanese as quickly as possible. They don't want to scare readers away with terrifying Japanese script and Chinese characters. Three, they want to teach you how to say English phrases in Japanese. Traditionally, with Roman languages such as Spanish, these goals represent no problems or are non-existent due to the similarities to English. However, because Japanese is different in just about every way down to the fundamental ways of thinking, these goals create many of the confusing textbooks you see today. They are usually filled with complicated rules and countless number of grammar for specific English phrases. They also contain almost no kanji, and so you finally arrive in Japan. Lo and behold, you discover you can't read menus, maps, hi, or essentially anything at all because the book decided you weren't smart enough to memorize Chinese characters. Does this one actually work? It is work. Is it recording right? Baby boss. They want to teach you on the first page how to say, "Hey, my name is Smith," but they don't tell you about all the arbitrary decisions that were made behind your back. They probably decided to use the platform even though learning the platform before the dictionary form makes no sense. They also might have decided to include the subject even though it's not necessary and omit it most of the time. In fact, the most common way to say something like my name is Smith in Japanese is to Smith. Okay. That's because most of information is understood from the context and is therefore omitted. But do most textbooks explain the way things work in Japanese fundamentally? No, they are too busy trying to push you out of the door with useful phrases right off the bat. What's going on? Daddy.
I really, really want to, after you're done, I really want to read a book with you.
Okay.
After you're done.
Yeah, I enjoy reading book with you as well. What book you want to read?
I really, really want to read the caterpillar one.
Okay, the caterpillar one. Okay. Um, yeah, I gonna go read with you in 10 minutes, okay?
Okay.
The result is a confusing mess of use this if you want to see this type of text, and the reader is left with a feeling of confusion about how things actually work. The solution to this problem is to explain Japanese from Japanese point of view. Yeah, makes sense. Take Japanese and explain how it works and forget about trying to force what you want to say in English into Japanese. Make total sense. To go along with this, it is also important to explain things in an order that makes sense in Japanese. If you need to know A in order to understand B, don't cover B first just because you want to teach a certain phrase. It's essentially what we need is a Japanese guide to learn Japanese grammar. That makes sense to me. Total sense to me. A Japanese guide to learning Japanese grammar. This guide is an attempt to systematically build up the grammatical structures that make up the Japanese language in a way that makes sense in Japanese. It may not be a practical tool for quickly learning immediately useful phrases such as for travel. However, it will logically create successive building blocks that will result in a solid grammatical foundation. For those of you who have learned Japanese from textbooks, you may see more big differences in how material is ordered and presented. This is because this guide does not seek to forcibly create artificial ties between English and Japanese by presenting the material in a way that makes sense in English. Yeah, uh, instead, examples with translations will show how ideas are expressed in Japanese, resulting in simpler explanations that are easier to understand. In the beginning, the English translations, for example, will also be literal as possible to convey the Japanese sense of the meaning. This will often result in grammatically incorrect translations in English. For example, the translation might not have a subject because Japanese does not require one. In addition, since article the and a do not exist in Japanese, the translation will not have them as well. And since Japanese does not distinguish between a future action and a general statement such as "I will go to the store" whereas "I go to the store," no distinction will necessarily be made in the translation. It is my hope that the explanation of examples will convey an accurate sense of what the sentence actually means in Japanese. Once the reader becomes familiar and comfortable thinking in Japanese, the translation will be less literal in order to make the sentences more readable and focus on the more advanced topics. Yeah, make total sense. Uh, be aware that there are advantages and disadvantages to systematically building a grammatical foundation from the ground up. In Japanese, the most fundamental grammatical concepts are often the most difficult to truly understand. This means that the hardest part of the language will come first. Textbooks usually don't take this approach, afraid that this will scare away or even frustrate those interested in the language instead. Instead, they try to delay going deeply into the hardest con- conjugation rules with patchwork and gimmicks so that they can start teaching useful expressions right away. This is a fine approach for some. However, it can create more confusion and trouble along the way, much like building a house on a poor foundation. The hard parts may be covered no matter what. However, if you cover them in the beginning, the easier part will be all that much easier because they'll fit nicely on top of foundation you have built. Japanese is syntactically more much more consistent than English. If you learn the hardest conjugation rules, most of remaining grammar builds upon similar or identical rules. The only difficult part from there on is sorting out, remembering all the various possible expressions and combinations in order to use them in correct situation. No, you will see half brackets like these uh, in the text. These are the Japanese version of quotation marks.